Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. I've enjoyed all of your testimony, so it's a great choice of panelists this morning. I don't think there's really that simple of answers on these questions. We're producing more oil and gas, and that has some real benefits in terms of national security, which was brought out clearly, in terms of prices, which encourages manufacturing in this country, which we need to do, and encourages other benefits too, employment, and that was brought out by Mr. Halleck. But there's also some disadvantages, gas leakage into the environment, which is a global warming problem, perhaps more of a problem than the coal production that we're trying, that gas might displace. There's groundwater contamination, but it seems that the disadvantages could be mitigated with high standards for the wells and also with requirements for transparency for fracking and horizontal drilling. Mr. Bradbury, would you comment on that, please?
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. Congressman, for the question. Well, absolutely. I think, well, this is one of the good news stories of the past year with EPA finalizing their new source performance standards for well completions, requiring green completions for all new natural gas wells. Those standards, it would be useful and I think common sense measure to have those applied also to liquids, natural gas liquids and oil wells with associated gas, just to have green.
Especially with regard to leakage.
This would address leakage at the well as you're starting the production. You're doing the well, finishing the development, the well completion of the well. And so that's a common sense standard that could be expanded beyond what's there. But there are also a number of other technologies that could be used, not just at the well, but across the spectrum.
Senator Johnson, I appreciate your comments about regulation of supply and demand is not necessarily a good place for us to go, but do you agree that we could use higher standards with regard to wells and to prevent leakage and to prevent contamination of groundwater? Do you think that's a good place for us to go here as a part of our policy making?
Yes, Mr. McNerney. I think no one cares more or has more to lose than the oil companies, oil and gas companies, about leakage and pollution. And so I think that they are working hard, I really do believe, to have the highest standards. One of the problems is that some of the smaller producers have yet to adopt the highest standards. We need to adopt the highest standards, particularly for fracking, because public support of fracking is very, very important. I think it deserves public support, and I think that they will be able to do it safely. That was the conclusion of a study done by John Deutsch, and Ernie Moniz was part of that study. They said, we need to have the highest safety standards, but we need to produce through fracking.
I think you've made an excellent point there. Then public acceptance is absolutely critical based on past performance. There are problems. Communities are going to be reluctant to allow fracking in their areas without the right transparency and assurances that this is a safe process. And I don't feel we're quite there yet. But I want to go on to Mr. Breen. I appreciate what the Truman National Security Project is doing with regard to the implications of our national policies in terms of national security, our national energy policies. How much work has the Truman Project done with regard to the implications of global warming on our national security?
Thank you for the question. It's good to see you. We've done quite a bit of it, as has, much more importantly, the Pentagon and the intelligence services. The consensus is that this poses a serious national security threat. The National Security Advisor, Tom Donilon, just gave a speech to that effect a couple of weeks back, saying that national security is threatened by climate. Recently, the commander of our forces in the Pacific was asked what his top national security concern was, which I think is an interesting question, given that he's responsible for China, North Korea, and a whole host of other issues in the Pacific, and his answer was climate. If you look at the accelerants of instability and the threats that come from this, with regard to terrorism, but also with regard to mass population migrations, terrorist recruiting, all kinds of issues, it's pretty clear that we're going to be dealing with this. And as General Zinni likes to say, we can pay down now and the cost will be in treasure, or we can pay down later and the cost will be treasure and blood.
Okay. I was going to ask Ms. Jaffe for your input on that, but I'm running out of time, so I'll have to yield back at this point.